The clock on the mantelpiece ticked softly, a steady drum against the silence of the grand hotel room. March 25th, 1915. Milton Hershey sat in a plush armchair, his gaze fixed on the bed where his dear wife, Catherine, lay. The room in Philadelphia was fancy, with thick velvet curtains and elegant furniture, but none of its beauty could hide the heavy sadness that filled the air. Catherine's breathing was shallow, each breath a soft whisper that Milton strained to hear. Her once rosy cheeks were pale, and her bright eyes, usually full of life and laughter, were now closed, hidden beneath delicate lids. Milton reached out a hand, gently touching her cool forehead. He felt a deep ache in his heart, a pain sharper than any business setback he had ever faced. He was a man who had built an empire, a vast chocolate kingdom that stretched across the country. His name, Hershey, was known everywhere, a symbol of sweet treats and hard-won success. He had $60 million, enough money to buy almost anything in the world. Yet, as he sat there, watching the woman he loved fade away, he felt completely helpless. His wealth, his power, his famous name, none of it could stop time or heal Catherine. A nurse, a quiet woman with kind eyes, moved softly around the room, checking bottles and adjusting blankets. She offered Milton a cup of tea, but he gently shook his head. Food and drink held no appeal. All he wanted was for Catherine to open her eyes, to smile her warm smile, to speak his name. He remembered the day they met, her bright spirit, her easy laughter that had filled his often serious world with joy. She had been his sunshine, his partner, the one person who truly understood him. Now that light was dimming. The city outside, usually bustling with trolleys and people, seemed muffled, as if even Philadelphia held its breath in sorrow. Milton thought of their home, the happy memories they had made, the quiet evenings spent together. He had worked so hard, all his life, to build something wonderful, to share his sweet dreams with the world. He had done it, becoming a giant in the candy business. But what was it all worth without Catherine by his side? He leaned closer to her, his voice a low whisper. "Catherine," he murmured, "my dear Catherine." He wanted to tell her again how much he loved her, how every moment with her had been a gift. He wanted to promise her that everything would be all right, even though deep down, he knew it wouldn't be. Not without her. The grand hotel room, meant to be a place of comfort, felt like a cage, holding him captive to this unbearable moment. The ticking clock continued its steady beat, counting down the precious seconds, moments that Milton wished he could freeze forever. The heavy silence of the hotel room pressed in on Milton, a cruel contrast to the bustling world outside that he had so skillfully conquered. He was Milton Hershey, the Chocolate King, a man whose name was on every tongue and whose factories hummed with endless production. His fortune, an astounding $60 million, was a testament to his drive, his vision, and his tireless work. He had built towns, schools, and even a trolley system in his model community. If there was a problem, Milton Hershey usually had the means to fix it, to build a solution, to make things happen. But here, by Catherine's bedside, all his power meant nothing. He had hired the best doctors, flown them in from across the country, spared no expense for treatments and medicines. He had moved Catherine to this luxurious hotel, hoping a change of scenery, away from the familiar, perhaps painful, reminders of home, might bring some comfort, some small spark of recovery. Every day, he had asked the doctors, "What more can be done? Name your price. Tell me what she needs." And every day, their answers had grown softer, their gazes more somber, their words full of regret. He remembered a time, not so long ago, when Catherine had been full of life. They had traveled, laughed, planned their future together. He had promised her the world, and he had delivered it, piece by piece, as his chocolate empire grew. Fine clothes, beautiful jewelry, grand homes. Anything she desired was hers for the asking. He had wanted to shower her with every luxury, to make up for the harder times he'd known as a young man. He had wanted to make her life a constant joy, a sweet dream. Now, those dreams were turning to dust. The weight of his $60 million felt like a lead blanket, heavy and useless. It couldn't buy her another breath, another heartbeat, another moment of health. He gripped the armrest of his chair, his knuckles white. The helplessness was a bitter taste in his mouth, far different from the sweet chocolate he had spent his life creating. He, who had always found a way, was now utterly without a way. The irony was not lost on him. He had spent his life democratizing luxury, making chocolate a treat for everyone, not just the rich. Yet the ultimate luxury, a longer life, good health for his beloved wife, was something his vast wealth could not purchase. The money that had brought him so much success and influence now felt like a cruel joke, mocking his inability to change this one most important thing. He would give every single dollar, every factory, every square inch of his town, if it meant Catherine could simply open her eyes and truly see him again. But the cold truth remained. Some things were beyond the reach of even the greatest fortune. The soft light of dawn began to peek through the heavy curtains, painting faint stripes across the hotel room floor. It was a new day, but for Milton, it felt like the end of all days. The nurse had quietly left some time ago, her face etched with a silent sorrow that mirrored his own. Catherine's breathing had grown fainter, then stopped. The gentle rise and fall of her chest, which had been a comfort even in its weakness, was now still. Milton sat, unmoving, in the quiet aftermath, the world outside continuing its rhythm, unaware that his own world had just shattered. Her death was not a sudden shock, but a slow, painful surrender that had been building for months. Yet, the finality of it hit him with the force of a physical blow. The silence in the room was no longer just sad. It was deafening, a hollow space where Catherine's laughter, her soft voice, her very presence used to be. He looked at her peaceful face, so still and calm, and a deep, cold emptiness settled in his chest. Before Catherine, Milton's life had been about building, about ambition, about the sweet taste of success. He had been a driven man, focused on his chocolate, on making his dream a reality. But Catherine had brought color to his world. She had filled the grand houses with warmth, turned a successful business into a joyful, shared adventure. She had taught him to appreciate moments beyond work, to find happiness in simple things, a walk in the garden, a quiet evening by the fire, a shared smile across the dinner table. She had been his anchor, his confidant, his greatest supporter. Now, that vibrant world, once so full of shared dreams and everyday joys, felt like a cold, empty tomb. The grand mansion in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which they had built together, seemed to loom in his mind like a mausoleum, a place of memories rather than of life. Every room, every object, would now hold a ghost of her presence, a painful reminder of what was lost. The bustling factories, the sweet smell of chocolate, the cheerful sounds of the town he had created, all of it now seemed muted, drained of its former luster. The future stretched before him, a vast, bleak landscape. How could he continue? How could he find joy in his work, in his success, when the one person he wanted to share it with was gone? The chocolate empire he had built, once a source of immense pride, now felt heavy, a monument to a life that had lost its brightest star. Catherine's death was more than just the end of a life. It was the end of his life as he knew it. The vibrant colors of his world had faded to gray, and the sweet melody of his happiness had been replaced by a mournful silence. He was rich beyond measure, but in this moment he felt poorer than he ever had in his challenging youth. The emptiness was absolute, a void that threatened to swallow him whole. As Milton sat by Catherine's still form, lost in the crushing silence of the hotel room, his mind drifted back, seeking refuge in a time before this unbearable grief. It went back to a boy, a skinny, determined child growing up in rural Pennsylvania, far from the grand hotels and vast fortunes. This was young Milton Hershey, born in 1857, whose early life was not sweet like the chocolate he would one day create, but rather full of moving and trying new things. His family moved often, which meant Milton went to many different schools and never stayed in one place long enough to make lasting friends. He only went to school until 4th grade. This lack of schooling might have stopped others, but not Milton. He learned best by doing, by trying, and by sometimes failing. His father, Henry, was often trying out new ideas, sometimes with little success, which meant the family didn't always have much money. His mother, Fanny, was strong and hardworking, teaching Milton the value of a good day's work. Milton's first job was as an apprentice to a printer, where he was supposed to learn to set type. But the careful, small work didn't suit his restless hands and big ideas. He lasted only a few months before he was fired. It was a candy maker in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, named Joseph Royer, who gave him his next chance. Here, among bubbling sugar and melting chocolate, Milton found his calling. He was fascinated by the way simple ingredients could be turned into delicious treats. He learned to pull taffy, make caramels, and understand the magic of sugar. After learning his trade, young Milton was eager to start his own business. He tried in Philadelphia, setting up a candy shop. He worked tirelessly day and night, making his own candies. He tried his best, but the business didn't do well. He had to close it down. Then he moved to Denver, where he learned about making caramels with fresh milk. He took that knowledge to New York City, trying again to make a name for himself. But even in the big city, his second candy shop failed. It was a tough lesson, teaching him about money troubles and how hard it was to make a business work. Many people would have given up after 2 big failures. But Milton Hershey was not like most people. He had a stubborn streak, a quiet belief that he could succeed if he just kept trying, kept learning. He was still a young man, but he had already seen more ups and downs than many people saw in a lifetime. Each failure was a stepping stone, not a stumbling block. He carried the lessons from each failed venture with him, saving up money, perfecting his recipes, and never losing sight of his dream to make candy that everyone would love. This boy, who had started with so little, was slowly but surely becoming the famous chocolate maker everyone would soon know. Milton's early struggles, the lean years and the failed candy shops, had taught him much more than just how to make sweets. They had taught him about the value of $1 and the simple pleasure of a small treat. Back then, chocolate was mostly for rich people. It was expensive, often bitter, and not something a working family could easily buy. But Milton believed it didn't have to be that way. He saw chocolate as a joyful thing, a little luxury that everyone, no matter how much money they had, should be able to enjoy. After his early failures, Milton went back to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and started the Lancaster Caramel Company. This time he found great success. His caramels, made with fresh milk, became very popular. He made a lot of money. But even with all his success in caramels, his mind kept going back to chocolate. He remembered the fancy chocolate he saw in store windows, treats that seemed out of reach for most people. He thought, why can't I make good chocolate that is also cheap enough for everyone? This idea became a big dream for him. He wanted to make chocolate that was smooth and creamy, a delight for the taste buds, but also easy for anyone to buy. He didn't want it to be a special treat, only for kings and queens or people with big houses. He wanted it to be a treat for every child, every worker, every family in America. It was a big idea, almost a revolution in the candy world. So, in 1900, after selling his caramel company for $1 million, Milton Hershey decided to focus all his efforts on chocolate. He bought land in Dairy Church, Pennsylvania, near his birthplace, where there was plenty of fresh milk from local farms. Milk was very important for making the creamy chocolate he imagined. He started building a factory, not just any factory, but one that would make chocolate in a new way. He traveled to Europe, learning about the latest machines and methods for making chocolate. He brought back the best ideas, eager to put them to use. He worked tirelessly, experimenting with recipes, trying to find just the right mix of cocoa, sugar, and milk to create the perfect milk chocolate bar. It was a challenge, but Milton loved a challenge. He wanted to make a chocolate that was better than anything else out there, but also affordable. This was not just about making money for Milton. It was about sharing happiness. It was about making a delicious part of life available to everyone, like a small piece of luxury in every person's hand. His vision was clear: to make milk chocolate a common joy, a treat that brought smiles to faces from all walks of life. This dream of making chocolate for everyone, not just the rich, became the heart of his new company and the reason his name would become famous around the world. Before Catherine, Milton's life was a grand plan, a factory humming with purpose, a town rising from cornfields. It was full of ambition and hard work, the sweet smell of chocolate always in the air. But it was also a little bit lonely. He was a man of quiet ways, dedicated to his work, and while he found great joy in his creations, something was missing. Then he met Catherine Elizabeth Sweeney. She was a lovely woman, full of life and warmth, with a sparkling laugh that could make any room brighter. She was born in Jamestown, New York, and had a cheerful spirit that drew people to her. When Milton met her, it was as if a new color had been added to his world, a vibrant hue he hadn't known was missing. He was already a successful man, building his chocolate empire, but Catherine brought a different kind of richness to his life. They married in 1898, and from that day on, Milton's world was transformed. Catherine didn't care about his money or his growing fame. She cared about him. She saw the kind heart beneath the serious businessman. She brought lightness and joy, making him laugh more easily and see the beauty in everyday things. With her, the grand house in Hershey became a home, filled with love and warmth. Catherine loved to travel, and she encouraged Milton to take breaks from his tireless work. Together, they explored new places, seeing the world beyond the factory walls. She loved art and music, and she filled their lives with these beautiful things. She wasn't just his wife. She was his best friend, his partner in every sense of the word. She listened to his dreams, celebrated his successes, and comforted him when things were tough. Milton, who had been so focused on making chocolate for everyone, found that Catherine made his personal life sweet in a way his business never could. She was his confidant, the one person he could truly share everything with. Her presence made everything better, from a simple meal to a grand party. She loved children, and though they never had their own, she had a kind way with all the children in the growing town of Hershey. Her spirit was infectious. She helped Milton see the world with a softer, more joyful eye. She added laughter and color to his quiet life, making it feel complete. With Catherine by his side, Milton felt truly happy, truly at peace. She was the heart of his home, the bright star in his sky, and her love made his remarkable life even more extraordinary. Their life together was a beautiful melody, a perfect blend of ambition and affection, making every day feel like a special gift. For years, their life together was a sweet dream, a happy tune played out in the growing town of Hershey. Milton and Catherine were a team, enjoying their success, their travels, and the warmth of their home. But like a sudden storm cloud on a sunny day, a shadow began to fall over their happiness. Catherine, always so full of energy and laughter, started to feel unwell. At first, it was just little things, a tiredness she couldn't shake, a cough that lingered longer than it should. Milton, ever the watchful husband, noticed these changes. He urged her to see doctors, to rest more. He wanted to fix it, just as he fixed problems in his factories. But this was a problem no amount of money or clever engineering could solve. As the months turned into a few years, Catherine's health slowly grew worse. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed, her cheerful laugh became less frequent, and her steps grew weaker. The grand trips they once enjoyed became difficult. Instead of planning adventures, they were planning doctor visits. The beautiful gowns Catherine loved to wear stayed in the closet, replaced by comfortable robes. Their home, once filled with lively chatter and music, became quieter, filled with the hushed sounds of illness. Milton spent less time at the factory and more time by her side, his brow furrowed with worry. He brought in the best doctors from everywhere, hoping for a miracle cure, a new treatment, any answer that would bring his Catherine back to her vibrant self. They tried different medicines, different places, even moving to warmer climates, thinking a change might help. But nothing worked. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about her illness, a sickness that slowly took away her strength day by day. The sadness grew like a heavy fog around them. Milton watched, heartbroken, as his beloved wife, the source of so much joy in his life, slowly slipped away. Her once bright and colorful world, which she had shared so generously with him, was fading. The happy memories of their marriage now had a bittersweet edge, tinged with the pain of her suffering. He tried to keep her spirits up, reading to her, telling her stories of their past, reminding her of all the good times. But he could see the tiredness in her eyes, the growing weariness that no amount of love could conquer. Their happiness, once so bright and steady, was now flickering like a candle in a strong wind. Milton felt a deep fear in his heart, a fear that grew with each passing day. The man who had built an empire from nothing was now facing something he couldn't build his way out of, something he couldn't buy his way out of. The dark cloud of Catherine's illness hung over them, casting a long, sad shadow over every moment they shared. The world, for Milton Hershey, had stopped. The quiet passing of Catherine left him in a profound stillness, a grief so deep it felt like a physical weight pressing on his chest. The bustling streets of Philadelphia, the endless hum of his factories, the sweet scent of chocolate that usually filled his days, all of it now seemed distant, meaningless. He returned to Hershey, but the town he had built with such pride, the grand mansion that was once their joyful home, now felt empty, a silent reminder of his loss. Every corner held a memory. Every room echoed with Catherine's absence. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, marked by a quiet, aching sadness. Milton, usually a man of action and purpose, found himself lost. The ambition that had driven him from a young age seemed to have vanished. What was the point of building more, of earning more, when the one person he wanted to share it with was gone? He walked through his vast chocolate factory, the place where his dreams had come true, but the machines, once a source of excitement, now just sounded like a mournful drone. He often found himself sitting alone, looking at old photographs of Catherine, remembering her bright smile and the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed. They had wanted children, but it had never happened for them. This shared dream, now unfulfilled, added another layer of sorrow to his heavy heart. He thought about his own childhood, moving from place to place, never quite having a stable home. He remembered the kindness of others, the small helping hands that had guided him when he was young and uncertain. In the midst of his deep sadness, a new idea, a powerful thought, began to take root in Milton's mind. It wasn't about chocolate or money or building another great thing for himself. It was about Catherine, about their unfulfilled wish for children, and about the many children in the world who had no one. He remembered how Catherine had loved children, how her face would light up when she saw them. He began to think about his vast fortune, the $60 million he had accumulated. It had failed to save Catherine, and now it felt like a burden, an empty treasure. He asked himself, what good is all this money if it can't bring back the one thing I truly want? What good is it if it just sits there while others suffer? A quiet resolve began to form within him. It was a radical idea, a decision that would change not only his life, but the lives of countless others. He knew Catherine would have approved. He knew this was a way to honor her memory, to turn his deep sorrow into something meaningful, something sweet for the world, just as he had once turned cocoa beans into sweet chocolate for everyone. The idea that had been stirring in Milton's grieving heart grew stronger, clearer. He had always been a man who acted on his convictions, and this conviction was perhaps the strongest of his life. His wealth, which had once felt like a symbol of his achievement, now felt like a tool, a means to a greater end. He decided he would give away his entire fortune, every single dollar of his $60 million, to help children who had no parents. This was not a small gift, a donation here and there. This was everything. His businesses, his factories, the very town of Hershey itself. All of it would be put into a special fund, a trust, to care for orphan children. It was a decision that shocked many people, but for Milton, It felt like the only right path. He remembered his own childhood, how he had felt adrift at times, and how he and Catherine had longed for children of their own. This act was a way to fill that empty space, both in his heart and in the lives of many deserving children. In 1909, even before Catherine's illness grew severe, Milton had quietly started a school for orphan boys. He called it the Hershey Industrial School. But after Catherine's death, his commitment deepened. He didn't just want to support the school. He wanted to make sure it would last forever, that it would always be there for children who needed it. So, on November 13th, 1918, he signed papers that placed his entire fortune, including his chocolate company, into a trust for the school. This meant that the Hershey Chocolate Company would no longer be just his. It would belong to the children, and all the money it made would go to run the school, to feed, clothe, house, and teach boys who had lost their way or had no family to care for them. It was an astonishing act of kindness, a generosity almost unheard of. Milton Hershey was giving away the very empire he had worked his whole life to build, all for the sake of children he would never personally know. He wanted these children to have a chance at life that he himself had sometimes struggled for in his youth. He wanted them to have a stable home, a good education, and the skills they would need to succeed in the world. He wanted them to feel loved and cared for, to have a place where they belonged. This trust, this incredible gift, was Milton's way of turning his deep personal sorrow into a lasting legacy of hope and opportunity. It was a monument to Catherine's loving spirit and to his own profound desire to make a difference in the world, far beyond the sweet taste of his chocolate. The Hershey Industrial School, which Milton had started in 1909 with a small group of boys, was now truly coming to life with the promise of his entire fortune. It wasn't just a building. It was a grand vision for how to raise children who had lost their parents or came from difficult homes. Milton didn't want it to feel like a cold, strict orphanage. He wanted it to be a real home, a place where boys could grow up happy, healthy, and smart. The money from the trust meant that the school could be built with the best facilities. Instead of one big building, there would be many smaller cottages. Each cottage would be like a family home, with a house mother and father to care for a small group of boys. This way, the children would get personal attention and feel like they were part of family, not just one of many in a large institution. Milton believed that a loving home environment was just as important as good lessons. The school was built in the beautiful countryside of Hershey, Pennsylvania, surrounded by green fields and fresh air. It had its own farms, where the boys could learn about growing food and caring for animals. They would have good, healthy meals, plenty of exercise, and warm beds. Milton made sure they received a strong education, not just in books, but also in practical skills. Boys learned trades like carpentry, farming, and printing, so they would be ready to find good jobs when they grew up. Milton often visited the school, walking among the boys, asking about their studies, and watching them play. He saw himself in their eager faces, remembering his own childhood where opportunities were scarce. He wanted to give these boys what he hadn't always had: a stable home, consistent schooling, and a clear path to a successful future. He wanted them to have the chance to dream big, just as he had. The school was more than just a place to live and learn. It was a place of hope. It gave boys who might otherwise have faced a tough life a chance to thrive. They were given good clothes, medical care, and toys to play with. They celebrated holidays and had school trips. It was a place where childhood could be restored, where laughter could replace sorrow, and where a future could be built on strong foundations. Milton's gift ensured that the school would never run out of money. The Hershey Chocolate Company, a thriving business, would continue to earn money, and all those earnings would go to the school. It was a promise that the school would last forever, a lasting tribute to Catherine and a testament to Milton's belief in the power of giving back. The Hershey Industrial School, later renamed Milton Hershey School, became a beacon of hope, all thanks to the incredible generosity of a man who turned his personal grief into a profound act of charity. Milton Hershey, the man who had built a sweet empire, could have simply lived out his days in quiet sorrow after Catherine's passing, surrounded by his immense wealth. He could have left his fortune to family, or spent it on personal comforts. But the grief, coupled with his deep understanding of struggle from his own youth, had reshaped his heart. By giving away his entire fortune, he didn't just make a donation. He rewrote his own life story. His legacy, once defined by the delicious chocolate bars and the thriving town of Hershey, now became something far greater and more enduring. His act of giving was a profound statement. It declared that true richness wasn't just about how much money you had, but about how you used it to help others. The $60 million that couldn't save Catherine now became a powerful force for good, building futures for thousands of children who had no other hope. It transformed him from a successful businessman into a great humanitarian, a man whose personal tragedy led to a public triumph of kindness. The Hershey Industrial School, which later became the Milton Hershey School, was not just a school. It was a living, breathing testament to his and Catherine's shared compassion. It was a place where children received not only an education, but also a loving home, a sense of belonging, and the chance to escape the hardships he himself had known. Every brick laid, every meal served, every lesson taught was funded by the enduring success of the chocolate company, ensuring that Milton's work continued to benefit others long after he was gone. This radical decision meant that Milton Hershey's name would forever be linked not just to chocolate, but to charity, to hope, and to the unwavering belief that every child deserved a chance. He continued to live a modest life, overseeing the school and the company, but his focus had shifted completely from personal gain to collective good. He found a new purpose, a way to honor Catherine's memory that was far more meaningful than any monument. His wealth, instead of simply accumulating, was put to work, constantly generating resources to uplift generations of children. It was an example that inspired many others, showing that immense success could be channeled into incredible acts of philanthropy. Milton Hershey's life became a powerful lesson, that even in the face of the deepest sorrow, one could find a way to create lasting joy for others. His final chapter was not one of lonely retirement, but one of profound generosity, ensuring that his money served a purpose far beyond himself, touching countless lives with the sweetness of opportunity and care.